Chase Grand Square. We were both young when I first saw you. I close my eyes and the flashback starts. I'm standing there.
All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking tonight. I've got Larry Marchese from Colorado. How are you, sir?
I am doing well.
So you're in Denver, Colorado. Whereabouts in Denver, Colorado?
Yes, I'm just north of Denver.
Okay.
And it's a community called Johnstown, but I just say Denver because everyone knows where that is.
Outstanding. Gotcha. We had talked, same thing. You know where I live because you spent a lot of time in Smyrna back in the day when you were traveling through. And I tell everybody I live in Atlanta because that's the easiest thing. That's a landmark. Everybody knows where Atlanta is. And so how long have you been in Colorado?
I moved to Colorado in 2015.
And we were talking earlier, you bounced around a little bit. Where all of you lived?
Yeah, I was born in Arkansas.
Okay.
And then I moved to Meridian to work for PV Electronics.
Okay.
So that was job related. And then I moved to Nashville, Tennessee to work for a software company. And then a software company moved me to Colorado, but then I retired in 2019.
Okay, very nice.
So,
very nice. Well, we're here because it's Square Dance Callers Talking. So you had told me, but I can't remember what the date was. When did you start dancing?
Yeah, so I learned to dance in 1969. My parents danced in the 50s, in the 60s. And my brother, I have two brothers above me. One brother above me, he started dancing before I did, and he was in the local teen club.
Okay.
And so when I was 8, at the time, the teen club didn't let you in the club until you're older than that.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, so my mom and dad just took me to their local club's class. And so I sat through the class for about 25 weeks. To be honest with you, I went to the class for the pizza.
Sure. Okay. I get you.
Because my mom said, if you will sit there and be quiet, we will get pizza after the class. But in the meantime, I'm there, and the class wasn't for me. This was an adult club. I wasn't allowed to go on the floor. But I watched him teach the calls, but I actually learned how to call.
Nice. Okay.
Just from listening to him.
Yep.
I learned the rhythm, the phrasing, the metering. And then because he called the same things over and over,
sure,
I started to see, I saw him using chicken plucker, except I didn't know what that was called then.
Right.
And then I saw him do invert and rotate. I didn't even know what that was called either. And I was going, wow, if you do that, the outside couple pair, I didn't even know what they were called. I was just a kid, right? And and so I learned he resolved from lines.
Okay.
And so I figured out how he did that. But I didn't know the names, the proper names of any of that. Gotcha. So I made up my own names.
Okay.
For the different lines. And so when that was over, I could sound like a caller.
No.
And I could get you to your corner. Except I didn't know anything exactly about it.
Right.
I just knew that if I called what he called, it would take you to your corner.
Okay.
So I remembered every little thing he did. So
and so you hadn't even started taking lessons yet. You're just listening to the call.
No, I actually never did take lessons. I went straight from that, and then I was. At first they wouldn't let me in the teen club,
right? Because
I was too young. But since my brother was in there, they made an exception.
Okay.
Because it was like a family thing or whatever. Yeah, so they let me in the club, and so the caller there let me call. At first, just a singing call. Mm-hmm. But I told him I could do patter, but he didn't believe me.
How old were you?
I was 10 years old.
10. Do you remember what that singing call was?
No. I did a different singing call every week.
Okay, very nice.
Yeah, but then he let me do patter, and all I did was I had it all memorized. Mm-hmm. I was looking at the dancers.
Right.
But I just called what my parents' caller called. And it was like the parents couldn't believe it. The parents were sitting there.
That is impressive.
But I did not know what I was doing until later. I was just copying him.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was 2 years later, the caller retired,
mm-hmm.
and they asked me to be the club caller. I was 12 years old.
Gee.
All right. And so I became the club caller of this teen club when I was 12, which is bizarro. But it wasn't until I was about 14 that I started figuring out what calling really was.
That's cool.
And I started learning the proper names for everything. But books didn't come out until I was about 17 or 18.
Okay.
This is when all the books came out.
Right.
And then I read those and learned the official name for everything. Like I called an out of sequence partner line a cross trail through line, because you called cross trail through to an Allemande left. So it was a cross trail through line.
I got you.
So if my number one couple was on the left, I was in a line.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, and his corner was in the line with him. That was a pass through wheel and deal center square through 3 line.
Gotcha.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it worked.
That's awesome.
The funniest line I had was called a nothing line. That was an opposite lady line.
Opposite lady? But
I called it a nothing line.
Okay.
Because no one was matched.
Right.
Right. But I learned from my parents' caller that if I star through, pass through, trade by star through, everybody's matched.
Right.
And then it was quickly easy to get to a cross trail through line if everybody was matched. Yeah. Anyway, so that my calling was very simple,
mm-hmm.
and that's how I did it. But people were amazed, even though it was very simple.
No, I understand. It is when you can see somebody who can just see that without having any kind of instruction, any real guidance at your age. That's amazing. It really
25 weeks of listening to a caller.
Yeah.
No phone, no toys, no books.
Yep.
All I had to do was just sit there, and I was told if I wasn't quiet, I didn't get pizza. So I kept my mouth shut.
Gotcha.
But I was watching the dancers and listening to him at the same time. And then I eventually, of course, I ended up being good at math. But maybe it was because of square dancing. But
it could be.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I figured all that out. And then, as I got 16 and 17, I started reading some of the books.
Okay.
And started understanding what it really was.
Okay.
And then when Cal Golden kind of took me under his wing.
Cal Golden, okay.
Yep, Cal Golden. Yep. That helped me a lot. Because until I was in my 20s, like I went to Color Lab when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first Color Lab. And until I was in that age, I had never called for any adult club.
Okay.
Only teens and singles.
Did you have to slow down?
Yes, dramatically.
That's what I thought.
Dramatically slow down. Yep. It was like killing me.
I'm sure. Yep.
Because I had called a certain way, for such a long time, and I did have some bad habits that I had to, work out. But there were many influential callers that I encountered that changed my life.
Who were some of those besides?
Yeah, so I met Frank Lane when I was 14. Okay. And my parents, we were traveling to the West Coast, but my mom wanted to go to Rocky Mountain National Park on the way. And so we stopped at Frank Lane's dance hall and danced him. Now, I wasn't allowed to dance because at the time, adults and teenagers didn't dance together.
Wow. Okay.
That's just the way it was.
Yep.
And so they told me I could dance one tip with my mom. But what I saw was the way he programmed his dance. Like he started very normal in the beginning, and little by little he would have them do certain things, and by the end of the night he could do way more complicated choreography, and everybody did it perfectly.
Yeah.
And I had never seen that done before.
That is impressive when you can see where me and you are is calling you much longer than me, but where
Yeah.
I'm at now, when you go to somebody, especially if you don't know who the person is and you watch and you
Yes.
listen to them, when you can really tell when somebody's got a handle on it. Just what you're saying. They take a floor
Yes.
and improve that floor throughout the night just
Yes.
based on the things they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I was transformed. Like when I got home, my dancer said, "What happened to you?" Yeah, because I had never seen that before. And there was another caller named Chris Veer.
Chris Veer.
Yeah, he was a British
Okay.
caller. He spelled it Vear.
Okay. British.
Yeah, and so he would come to town every year, and he his choreography was so different from mine that I listened very carefully to what he called, and I tried to get something out of every dance.
Okay.
Back then, I could just remember it, not like today.
Oh,
But then I could remember it,
yeah. I know the
and so
feeling.
he
Yeah.
really had a big effect
Okay.
on my choreography. He was one of the best callers in the country, if not the very best. Even though he's not as famous as some
Okay.
other callers, he ended up dying young,
Oh, no
a
kidding.
heart attack in his 50s or 60s, somewhere in there. But he was, I never could. Every time Chris was in town, there was nothing that was going to keep me away from that dance.
Yeah. Oh, I know
That's
the
that's
feeling.
how much I liked him. But
That's awesome.
I'll tell you about another caller that had
Yeah,
a
let's
big
go.
impact on me. His name was Gene Trimmer.
Okay.
Okay, you probably never heard of him.
I have
Gene
not.
Trimmer. Okay, so Gene he was an Air Force guy.
Okay.
And so he started calling once he retired. So he was starting calling like in his 60s or whatever,
Okay.
something like that. But Gene was, he must have learned computers in the Air Force because nobody had computers back then.
Right.
But he was a choreography guy. So he wrote books. You can buy them on. You can still
Okay.
buy them today. He has like four books, and he was a military guy.
Mm-hmm.
So when you would meet him, he would be very stoic, and not
Yeah.
smile. Okay,
Right.
and he would get on stage to call, and he would not smile. He would just wouldn't smile. But this guy was the greatest caller entertainer I've ever known.
Yes, that's outstanding. Gene Trimmer.
And part of it is because you would never believe it.
Is that right?
But like if I introduced him to you, you would say there's no way that this guy's a great entertainer. Because he was not outgoing. He was quiet. Yeah. But he could do pantomime.
No kidding. Very nice.
So he had a character called Roger that would sit on his shoulder, and he'd go back and forth. And the reason it was so funny is because it was him who never smiled, right? It was so funny. And so when people would hire him to call, he could only call if he would do something at the after party.
Wow. Okay.
And anyways, so he taught me, how to blow people's mind with entertainment.
Okay.
I've never seen a caller do pantomime or ventriloquism. He used ventriloquism and pantomime both. Jeez. And he's just like the last person. And I used to just shake my head because he's a stoic choreography guy, and he's up there. The dancers are loving it. His calling was ordinary, but his ability to entertain was incredible.
That's a gift. It really is.
Yeah. And I'll mention one more guy.
Okay.
So this guy's Don Franklin. Mm-hmm. Okay, Don was famous in the 70s. And Don created the first record label that everybody had to have everything they made. Okay. It was called Wagon Wheel.
Wagon Wheel, I've heard of it.
Yeah. So Don was the owner of Wagon Wheel.
Okay.
But Don was a very special caller.
Mhm.
Now, the people he hired became more famous than him. Gary Shoemake,
Gary, okay.
Jerry Haig.
Yeah.
Many of the guys on his label became very famous.
Wow.
But anyway, this guy, I don't know if you know what I mean by phrasing.
Mm-hmm.
This guy, when he called, it was so smooth and the phrasing was so clean that it was just enjoyable to listen to the guy speak. And he could do yodeling.
Okay.
Like perfect control yodeling. He would make sound effects with his voice.
Yep. Nice.
Okay. It's hard to imagine what this was like.
I'm sure
he had
it
certain
is.
singing calls that he would use this, and the dancers just loved it. But the guy could phrase the line better than any caller I knew of at the time.
That's awesome.
So I remember I just wanted to call like him. Okay. I wanted to be able to be as smooth and phrase and meter as well as he did.
Wow.
Yeah. So when I knew we were doing this podcast, I thought back to the guys that really made a big influence on me.
Okay. Outstanding.
And
we don't have a lot now. And now, obviously, I don't know all the callers that are out there. I know a lot, but not a lot of them. But Tim Mariner used to do sound effects.
Yes.
He was doing cowboy and things like that. There's a recording of Volcano, Jimmy Buffett song.
Oh, right.
He does sound effects on it, and the record that I use, the version that I use, has his sound effects on it. He was an awesome dude, and
yes, unfortunately, I was out of the activity when he was around.
Okay. Now, why did it? Was it for work? Why did you get out of the activity?
Yeah, that's hard for me to explain. So
okay.
I called up until 1992.
Okay.
And then I took a job in another state, and I got married and started having kids.
Okay.
And I'm basically got distracted.
That'll take you out of it. It will, brother.
And then I, because I'd been doing it for so long, and I was a little burnt out.
Sure. Yep.
Because my whole life was nothing but square dancing.
Okay. What got you back into it?
My company decided to move me to Colorado.
Okay.
Okay. I was in Nashville, and when they did that, I went to my wife and said, we need to find something to do together. And what do you think about us getting back into square dancing? Not calling, just square dancing. And she goes, okay, we could do that. And I said, we can do round dancing as well, because that'll be. And so we came to Colorado, and so she immediately had to have shoulder surgery.
Okay.
And Jerry Justin, you know who Jerry is?
I do, yes, sir.
Yeah, Jerry and I are old friends.
Okay.
Yeah, so Jerry and I, he came to Colorado to call. He was actually calling his last dance in Colorado. And so I met him at the dance, and told him we had dinner after the dance. Mm-hmm. Matter of fact, I actually ended up dancing at that dance because when I got there were 7 solo ladies.
Okay.
Okay, and I was just sitting there, and they were all talking among themselves, and they came over and said, "We need you to dance." Okay. And I said, "Well, I haven't danced in 25 years, but I'll give it a shot." So I went. I had a different lady every tip.
Very nice. Okay.
It was all coming back to me that night. But yeah, so I started square dancing in 2016, mm-hmm. and then my wife and I, we decided to just do round dancing because we could control her shoulder a little bit better.
Gotcha. Yep.
Doing that. So we round danced, and then I in 2018. I started thinking about calling again. Yeah. And so I went to a color lab, even though I hadn't started calling yet.
Gotcha.
Just to, and I went to all the sessions just to kind of get my mind.
Yep.
Yeah. And then a club had an emergency and everyone was booked. So I ended up doing the dance, and that was in July of 2018. That was the first time I had called in a long time.
It's a bug, brother. Once it gets in you,
Yeah.
And the only thing I have to compare it to was that year and a half or so with COVID when everything was done for a solid year. I didn't get to call at all. And
yeah, funny, that year I could still remember not square dancing.
Yep.
So I thought, oh, it's like before, we came back to dancing. So I could remember it. But I actually, I had just learned C1 in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent the whole year trying to not forget the calls. Yeah, so I just studied the calls all year. Since then, I've learned C2, and I danced that, and now I'm learning C3A currently.
Wow.
I'm in a C3A class.
Outstanding.
But
do you call to that level now? What do you call to?
I call C1. That's the highest level I call right now.
Okay.
I could call C2 if I needed to.
Okay.
I would probably need to prepare a little bit.
I got it.
But because I've danced it for almost 2 years now.
Okay.
When you dance a level, you can pretty well call it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be great.
I've always been told, and I only danced a plus. I've taken advanced a couple of times, but I never stuck with it. I finished, but I never stuck with it, and you lose it if you don't keep doing it. But I was always kind of told, call one level below where you dance.
Right.
That way you have a handle on it.
Well, that's what I do.
Okay. And so, so I would.
The number of dancers gets real thin above C1.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It certainly does. Especially
so that's the primary problem.
Yeah. Around here, Hot Atlanta is the only one that dances into the C's that I know of.
Right. Like in Colorado, we only have 2 squares of C3A dancers.
Okay.
In the entire state. Right. So once I learn C3A, I'm going to be lonely. There's just not enough dancers.
Yeah. No, the only time I even see C level is if I go to a convention, whether it be a national convention. Georgia State doesn't have C's. Some of the other states might, but you go in there and it's just, I'm mesmerized. I don't know how somebody can, first of all, call it, second, actually dance all of it when they're not making mistakes, Oh.
Yes. By the way, Steve Kottman, who you've interviewed, he was a big influence on my advanced calling. And I learned so much from him. I went to the Tennessee convention twice in a row just to listen to him call advance. And he actually did something else he doesn't know. He transformed my entire view of music in square dancing.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so Steve uses different music than and at the time I wasn't aware that you could use so much different music and that the dancers would love it. But I saw the dancers just loving it. I mean, they so loved it. And it was totally different music. It's like regular music.
Right.
Singers and the whole bit. And so it just totally blew my mind.
Okay.
And so when I came back, I thought, I'm going to use some more of this and see how the dancers react to it. Yeah. So I'm a mix now.
Okay. Very nice.
Like I use loads of pattern, mostly all riverboat.
Okay.
Riverboat. And of course, I use normal singing calls.
What and I try to get that out of everybody. What's some of your favorite singing calls?
Favorite singing calls? Well, Love Story. I have to say that one because that's the one I recorded.
Okay. What label was it on?
That was on Riverboat.
Riverboat Love Story. Okay.
Yeah. I like Crest. You Make Love and Fun. Not Make Love and Fun. What is that other one I do? Don't you forget about me. That's on Crest.
Outstanding. Love
that. Yeah, that's a 80s pop tune.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep.
And there's not too much. That's one of my faves.
Yep.
And so I actually have a lot of Acme and Crest and Riverboat.
Okay.
I better say Royal or I'll get in trouble.
Hey man, the next convention we're at, let's do that one together somewhere. I love that one.
Yeah, we could.
Don't you forget about me. I do it at I have 2 clubs, and I'm not going to overuse music. I've got a lot of music now.
Right.
I try and do it about 3 times a year. But love that one. What's the other one that I've been doing a lot of? The one that I love, REM. It's an REM.
Oh, okay.
And I think Square Dance Bob put it out. Okay. SD Bob is fantastic.
Right.
But yeah,
right.
absolutely, man. Next convention we're at, let's damn break that.
There's some music that's a little bit too young for some of my dancers, but
I know, sir. I know the feeling.
So I give them what they like. Yeah. I even do some traditional for them because they love it so much.
Yeah.
But then I sneak in a few of my faves too. You know.
What I've kind of gotten into with my clubs and the local area clubs around here is I'll give them some of the old patter because they really like the banjos and the fiddles and all that. There's so much new patter out there that sounds exactly like the radio songs. That's great. And I use that too, depending on where I'm at. But the patter, I'll go with some of the old boogie sticks and things like that.
Yeah, boogie sticks is actually really good. You know how you can tell. Yeah. So if you put on music, look at your dancers and see if they're tapping their foot before you even pick up the mic. And boogie sticks, it's almost a guarantee.
It is.
You put that on and people start tapping their feet.
Yep.
And that's a good, a good sign.
That's a good one.
I told Bob Elling that was his best pattern.
It's a fantastic. I use it on a regular basis.
Yeah, right.
And that one I actually heard that the first time. We had a caller. He's passed away now. The guy, one of the first guys that taught me about calling, Ray Monty, who called for 60 some odd years or more. But he'd been calling so long. Every other Friday night when I was in his club, you were getting boogie sticks on the first or second patter. You knew it was coming. And so now that I call, I don't do it that often, but I'll break it out and I'm like, hey, this is for Ray Monty, and I'll do boogie sticks. That's awesome.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, before we get too far into it, man, I saw on Facebook you've got a book coming out. Tell me about your book.
Sure. Yeah. So, as I mentioned to you, at Caller Lab last year, I showed a bunch of callers a lot of material that I was working on, and they suggested I write a book. And at the time, I thought, well, I've never written a book before, yada yada yada. And but then afterwards, I thought, well, let me put this together and see if I can make it work for a book.
Okay.
And so 230 pages later,
nice,
which took me about 6 months. I decided to use a plus teaching order, the latest teaching order, because I needed some order, so I just went with that.
Okay.
And and it's funny, I had a certain format, but then when I was about halfway into it, I decided I needed to do something different. Okay. So I had a little bit of that going on until I finally locked in the way I was.
Now, is it out? It's not out yet. Have you put it out?
It is out.
It is out. Okay. What's the name of it?
Yeah, it's the Caller's Guide to the Plus Program.
Gotcha.
And so the modules are it's modules, so you can piece them together. So I've got get in modules, zeros, and get outs.
Okay.
So you can mix it up any way you want. And there's over 1,000 total modules. I think it's more like 1,100.
Wow, outstanding.
I didn't actually. I counted them right before the book was done, but then I went back and added a lot more.
Okay.
So I didn't recount it, but it's 1,000 to 1,100 modules.
Okay.
And I have them marked in the book by standard modules, meaning everybody can dance them.
Okay.
And more extended for club level, where the club wants something a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mark that, and I show how different ways you can use the call that I rarely hear from other callers, but it's good to know how you can use calls in different ways, because it doesn't necessarily make it hard. it just makes it a little different.
Yep.
So I'm always looking for something different that's not going to break down dancers.
Yeah, no, and that's what good dancers are looking for. Just something different.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to amaze people every
yeah,
time.
if it breaks them down, it's not useful.
No.
But if it gives them just a slight tweak on it,
yep.
and you also can be ready to give them help on the spot.
Sure.
If you need to, then you can do that.
Okay.
And there's some plus calls that you can bring to an Alaman left, but not from the standard position.
Okay.
And so if you just don't mind showing your dancers how to do it, like from a sachet position, you can bring them right into an Alaman left, which is pretty cool.
Nice. That is.
Right. So they're good for it if you just show them how to do it.
Awesome. Because
they've only done it one other way. Yeah. So I show in the book, I show you how you can use these calls to do right and left grands and Alaman lefts out of. But I mentioned it's not from standard position, so you'll need to teach your dancers to do that.
That's really.
But usually they're good for it. My plus club, they're fine with me showing them stuff, and you might think it's hard, but it's when they're doing chase right, it doesn't matter if the dancers are in different places. Yeah. They can figure out how to do a chase right. So it's not like it's it's not as hard, because it's not standard. Right. Some callers are frightened to use it.
Sure.
But there's certain things you can even make a joke about it, by what I mean? Yeah, by having your sashayed and you're calling chase right, and you're having the guy roll back, and you're kind of making fun of him a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And pretending like he doesn't know what he's doing, right? Yeah. And everyone's laughing, and it's a way to make things. Never take every opportunity to add funny things.
Sure.
Into your things that anytime the dancers are laughing, they're having a great time. Yep. So every dance I go to, I think about. I actually write modules. In parentheses, I put funny.
Okay.
Okay, because I'm doing something funny in it.
Okay.
And so let's say I'm doing a tip and I'm focusing on walk and dodge.
Right.
All right. So you can walk and dodge from facing lines by saying boy walk, girl dodge, or girl walk, boy dodge. But what happens when you have two boys together? And you have same-sex couples.
Yeah.
Right. So I make a joke about it, and I say left dancer walk, right dancer dodge, and they laugh, and then it's to a right and left grand.
Oh, that's nice.
So even if somebody doesn't quite get it, no harm done, right? Yeah. So that's what I call a funny. Yeah. So I'm always trying to come up with funny things to do.
You have to keep the dancers guessing. You'll always have a handful at a dance that want the same old thing, and I understand that they're comfortable. They're comfortable in a certain thing, but you want to be the one that stands out and be like, I remember when that Larry guy came in here and did that, chase right with the boys doing it. And so that's awesome. That's good stuff.
So in the book, I have lots of little things like that.
Now,
I have a lot of tips.
How do you get the book?
It's electronic.
Okay.
You go to PayPal and send me $29.95.
Okay.
And I email you the book.
Gotcha. PayPal. I'll do that.
Yep.
Outstanding.
But so far, the people that have got it are very good. They're very happy with it.
Now, I'm looking forward to taking a look at it. You were also telling me about a newsletter that you're starting.
Yes. Yeah. So that's brand new. So my book is in teaching order.
Okay.
So the modules reflect that.
Okay.
So AC-Doocy is the first call on the list.
Okay.
So in AC-Doocy, I'm not giving you modules that include other plus calls because you haven't learned them yet.
Okay.
The dancers haven't learned them yet, right? So it's only the last call that gets all the plus calls in it, right?
That's great, man. That is fantastic.
You know what I mean? So with every call, I get to add something else.
Right.
But in the newsletter, these are modules that are focused on a specific call.
Okay.
But it's not in a teaching context. Mm-hmm. And so those are just general purpose modules that feature a single call.
Okay. And how do you get the newsletter?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Yeah, yeah. So I have a free promo that
Mhm.
I've just put together, and I'm gonna send it out and let everyone on Facebook know about it,
Okay.
and they can take a look at it, and then I'm gonna figure out what I'm gonna do with the real one.
Okay.
And the real one has SSD, mainstream, advanced. Oh yeah, plus plus advanced, and then C1 as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yep. So I have all the programs that I'm knowledgeable about,
Okay.
and I'm including that as well. I'm super eager to. I'm going to send it to some challenge callers
Okay.
and make sure it's. This is really for the not the challenge, the deep challenge people, but for the callers that call C1 on a less
Okay.
regular basis.
That's awesome.
And anyway, there's quite a few of those.
Okay.
And but anyway, yeah. So I've got that coming out as well.
As far as the book and the newsletter, and we
Yeah.
talked about it, and I've actually taken, I think, some GSI. Tell me about your Caller Coach Accreditation that you're working on.
Yeah, so I've been working on that for a few years.
Mhm.
And the way that starts is I have to accumulate 200 hours
Okay.
of helping callers. And I just recently passed that.
Very nice. Okay.
So now and after that, I had to become a accredited caller.
Mhm.
Okay, so I did that, and I got my certificate in.
Okay.
And to do that, you got to get callers to sign that you're competent
Yep.
at the craft, and then you send it into Caller Lab, and they give you your certificate. And
Okay.
so that you do that. Now I'll have an official application that I'll send in, and I've put together all my materials, and I will send that in, and then they will send me the file to study for the test.
Very nice. Okay.
Yep. So that's what I have coming.
What's your goal on that? When are you looking to take the test? You know, do you have
You
a
know,
goal?
when I get the file and look at it, I'll know if I already how much of it I already know.
Okay. Very nice.
So
Okay. Yep.
I may know a lot of it, or I may not know a lot of it.
Okay. I think the last GSI school at the Nationals is when I think I sat in on a couple of classes you were working with. If I'm correct, I can't.
Yeah.
I know I was in on something you were doing.
That's
What
right.
other schools have you done that you've
I've
actually?
done 4 schools
Mhm.
officially. The
Okay.
reason I say officially, this is kind of funny, but
Yeah.
when when I first came back to calling, I went to a school as a student,
Okay.
but they actually had me teach 2 sessions,
Nice. Okay.
which is
Yeah.
crazy, right?
Very nice.
But yeah, because I had some skills from work
Mhm.
that I had at work. I was a software trainer.
Okay.
Yeah, so they wanted they I had to learn all the learning styles, and so they wanted me to talk about learning styles in the context of teaching class.
Right.
Yeah, so I did that. The other thing is in the '80s when I called, in '85 I switched to mental image. I bought Don Beck's book,
Yep.
and I became for 5 years I did nothing but exclusively mental image.
Wow. Okay.
But it was easy because at my club I started with a class,
Mhm.
and then after that I was good and I could just call with it, and so I did that. And then when I returned, and when I turned to dancing, I reread the book
Mhm.
just for fun. And so when I went to the school, it was all fresh on my mind.
Very nice.
So they asked me if I would talk about mental image because none of them used mental image.
Okay.
So I did a session on mental image,
Gotcha.
a very, very basic session.
Very nice. I'd like to look more into that because I've taken a ton of schools and I've learned a lot from every one of them. And the saying goes, I think I'm a sight caller, but I'm really just using stuff that I remember in my head to
Yeah, I
get to a
understand.
paired couple and then whatever memorized get outs that I have. But I would like to, I've heard about the mental image, but I probably need to look more into that. Just another tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, mental image is an interesting system. And even though I don't use it currently,
Mhm.
what I learned in it is extremely helpful.
Is it? Okay.
You know what I mean? So even though I'm not actually even using it, but you learn
Right.
things in that system that, for example, you don't need to know anything about sequence when you're using mental image. However, you learn some things about sequence that you never realized before.
Gotcha.
In that system. The other thing you learn is places you can do Alaman lefts that you didn't realize.
Okay.
Okay. So like I had no idea, but when I started using mental image in the 80s, the first thing that happened is all my Alaman left spots changed because there was a whole bunch of new ones. But I still keep that in my head today.
Okay.
And so when I'm writing modules, which is what I use today, a lot of my mental image stuff comes into play.
Okay.
Like when you write a module, you need to wrap it up quickly. Sure. You can't play around and plug that in and hope it works. Yeah. And so the more experience you have, the quicker you can write modules.
Okay.
Because let's say you're doing a spin chain to gears module. That's a technical zero. Right. So you can only, this is my old 70s stuff.
Okay.
But you can only call it from certain arrangements, or you'll get not what you want. We'll call it that. Right.
Okay.
So some calls just take the boys out of sequence. So if you're going to write a module, you need to start with the boys out. So when you finish the module, they'll be in. So you can do your Alaman left.
Yep.
Right. So if you know that, you can be smarter writing modules. If you know what the call is doing to the sequence.
Okay.
Anyway, most people are bored to death with sequence. Like they don't want to even touch it with a 10-foot pole.
I got you.
Right. But
it's not comfortable for some people. And
and it's not near as useful in site calling. It's a little useful, but it's not needed because you can in the when I was 20 and between 20 and 30, when I was thinking a lot about sequence, when I had matched on the outside and unmatched on the inside, like I would look at sequence instead of, hey, the guy's corner's right behind him, square through 30. You know what I mean? So I didn't need sequence. I could just see it.
Okay.
When I'm site calling. Yeah, but before that, we would check sequence before we would.
Okay.
All that, so some sequence things I realize I don't even need. And then have you interviewed Bear Miller?
I have not. Bear is such a big dude most of the time. I've been trying forever, for 2 years to get.
Yeah, he's one of the few callers and site callers that can see sequence like on the fly.
That's impressive.
It's hard. It's hard to see it on fly.
At some point, I'll get Bear on here. I've been trying, but he's hard to lock down to a night. So
yeah, I get it.
I may have to wait until the convention in Colorado to actually sit him down and have a talk with him. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, he's one of he. When I first went to his dances, he impressed me.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I could tell right away.
Bear was one of the when I started going to Caller Lab. I don't know. 8 years ago, 9 years ago, whatever it was. Right. And I knew nobody really except local Georgia people. Bear Miller was the first one, I saw people talking to him. I went up and said hey to him, introduced myself. And from that day on, every time Bear sees me, it's a stop, it's a conversation. I don't care if we're in the hallway. In an elevator, we get off the elevator and we talk for 20 minutes.
That's how he is. He's such a wonderful person. Yeah. I'll tell you this, when I got to Colorado, I had never called stirs before. Stir the bucket.
No kidding. Okay.
I had never called those before. And man, he was like the master at it.
No, I did not know that.
He's the master. He's the stir master.
That is awesome. See, and I've heard that it's different down here in the South, Georgia, whatever you want to call it, the Southeast. You stir the bucket. I don't care what level you're calling at. You stir the bucket every time. If you don't, they're like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, right.
Right. So you always stir the bucket. Now I talked to Ted Lazat and them up in the Northeast, and they're like, "We never stir the bucket." Right. So, but yeah, down here you do it. I didn't know that about Bear. That's awesome.
Yeah. So when I decided to return to calling, the first thing I thought, I've got to learn how to do these stirs like Bear does them. And and so when dancers compliment me, I say, you can thank Bear Miller.
Oh, that's awesome. Very good. That's awesome, Larry.
Anyway, yeah, I learned a couple of things from him. I learned also how to manage right and left grand get outs better. I learned that from him.
Just watching him, or y'all talk about how that comes
When I was dancing to him.
Okay.
I saw what he was doing with them,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw how the dancers responded, and I basically figured out how to do it as well.
Gotcha.
And Hal Barnes, do you know him?
I do not know Hal.
You should put him on your interview list.
Hal Barnes. I will do that.
Yeah, Hal Barnes.
Okay.
He's been calling for, over 50 years.
Okay.
So among the callers that call for 50 years,
mm-hmm.
some got to a point when they were in their 20s and are still at that level. I mean, it's a good level. Don't get me wrong.
No, I understand.
And they're still at that level.
Mm-hmm.
Hal has gotten better every year of his life.
Okay.
So he's like crazy good right now. Crazy good. And he's not even famous.
Now, is he also where is he?
Yeah, he lives in Colorado as well.
Okay. Hal Barnes.
Yeah. So I learned.
Don't forget, before we get off here tonight, let me get his email from your contact.
Okay. I can email you his email.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I learned a lot from him as well.
Okay.
Yes. So for one, Hal is the smoothest caller.
Smooth. Okay.
You'll ever dance to.
Nice. Okay.
Okay. So I learned some things he does. I danced to him like for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I made a point to, and I also learned he does some things with singing calls that I've now adopted. Okay. So he starts the singing call right at home or just slightly past home. Okay. He doesn't start it in front of home. Okay. And so the dancers never stop. No. They always promenade. Okay. And I started noticing this, and I was going, how does he do this? And I finally figured out how he did it.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So I learned that from him. Okay. And I started to adopt. Now I know exactly how to do it. But I learned that totally from him. And so this has all been since 2018. Okay. I've learned so much since 2018. Wow. It's really affected my calling. That's awesome. And so the moral of the story is, it doesn't matter how long you've been calling, always try to learn something new.
Yeah. I was going to say that. I mean, there's a handful of callers in our profession that have been doing it for 50, 60, 70 years, all their lives. Some of them, that's all they've ever done. But they can still learn, and you're going to learn something from them for sure. But, I might learn something from somebody who's been calling 3 years because they see something a little different than I do. Right. So absolutely, man.
Yeah. Let me tell you something else about Hal that you want to talk about.
Yeah.
He is an asymmetric caller expert.
Ooh.
He's an expert at asymmetrical calling.
Okay. I got you.
He's so good at it that when I write my own asymmetrical stuff,
right,
I send it to him to check. And he'll be straight with you. He'll be totally straight with you. He is the master at it.
Right. I would love to talk to him.
It doesn't matter how good I think mine might be. I brace myself when I send it to him because he's the master. He's written a book about it, by the way.
Definitely got to talk to him. Yeah.
If you ever get to dance two couple to him, during 2020,
right?
I've never heard two couple as good as him.
Wow. Okay.
And he's highly skilled.
Definitely got to.
He's very humble about it too. Okay, but he's highly skilled.
Okay. Definitely want to talk to him. That's awesome.
He is one of the best callers in the world right now, and people don't even know it.
Does he travel much, or does he just stay around where he is? He doesn't travel
well. He's older now and retired.
Okay.
Right. So he doesn't want to. He goes to Maryland. He's quite a rock star in Maryland.
Okay.
He goes there like once a year to see his kids.
Gotcha.
And as soon as he goes, he has these huge dances because he's only there,
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, he also picks some very interesting music to use. But
so as far as your dances, and you were telling me the process. How do you go into a dance now? Do you have clubs, or do you just club call? What do you do?
yeah, so I called for a plus club,
Okay.
and I have an advanced club and a C1 group. So I have 3 groups right now. I used to have I tried to salvage a mainstream club that was shutting down, and I was able to keep them afloat for about 2 years, but eventually didn't happen. Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
In all
And I've
the
taught
places,
two SSD classes, but they weren't mine. I got hired by the club, other clubs. There's a bunch of clubs in Denver. Yeah, I call quite a bit at other clubs.
Okay, very nice.
So
with all the places you've lived and the calling you've done, where all have you traveled? Have you traveled out of state, out of country, or anything like that?
no, let's see. No, I have not been out of the U.S. I've called in the past, in the '80s. I called in Texas a lot, Georgia, where you live,
Okay.
Arkansas, Tennessee, Texas a lot, Kansas, Missouri. I was a southern regional caller in the
Now,
80s.
in
But
any of
since I've moved
those,
to Colorado,
yeah.
I've only called in California, Albuquerque, Boise. I think that's it. Oh, Nevada. Called once in Nevada.
Okay.
Yeah. The club in Nebraska has asked me a dozen times, but I just can't. Every time they want me to call, I'm booked. So I'll eventually get Nebraska in there. But,
Well, out of all those places you've called, and some of them may not be there anymore. I understand places come and go sometimes.
I'm just those are the ones recent.
What are some of the venue? Does any venue or any place like that stand out, like a hardwood floor or a club or anything like that?
Yeah. Now I have called in some dedicated square dance facilities.
Those are nice.
But yeah, I don't remember anything super special about them. Back in the '70s, we had a lot of special venues.
Yeah.
Not so much anymore.
And I thought about that a while back because now it's I call in a rec center, senior homes, gyms. There's still some dedicated halls out there, and that's what kind of brought me to that. There's a couple in Tennessee that I've been to that are nothing but square dance, and they are just phenomenal.
You've been the one in Knoxville, square dance?
I have. I've been lucky enough to call there. It's nice when all you have to bring is your laptop. Bring your laptop and your mic, and you hook it up, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I called it one in. I forgot about Iowa. Yeah, so I called a dance in Iowa with a couple of guys. It was a 3-color dance. I forgot about that. And yeah, you just plugged in. They had a sound system built in.
That's nice. Yep.
That's Tom Manning's club.
Tom Manning.
So I did it with Tom and another caller. We may do it again next year. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I finally, this past national convention, I got to actually talk to Tom for 30 or 40 minutes. First time I've actually had time to have a conversation with him. It's awesome.
I did one dance with 24 squares this year. That was the biggest.
Where was that?
Far.
Where was that?
Yeah, that was in Shreveport, bizarrely.
No kidding. Okay.
Yeah,
24 squares. Nice.
Yeah. It ended up being people from Texas and Alabama, and I was shocked. I was expecting 8 squares at the most. And when 24 showed up, I was in shock. But I was happy about it, of course. Yeah, that was with Tim Till.
I met him at 2 national conventions ago.
Okay.
I met Tim. Awesome guy.
Yeah. Tim and I actually go way back.
Do you now? I see. I've never got to. Well, I'm sorry. I did the last call at the after party at the national convention this past year with Tim and Vernon. I shouldn't have brought this up. I forgot the 4th person.
No worries.
But we had Tim, and they were like, keep an eye on Tim. he might get out of control on you. And I was like, okay. And but he's an
He is
awesome
so
guy.
much fun to dance to. Just
Yeah,
dance
I
to
you
him.
know
Because
I've
like
got to.
he carries on a conversation while he's calling.
I've heard that. See, I've never got to go to like a dance of his.
And it's
Um,
like funny. It's some funny story. He's telling a funny story as he's calling. I'm thinking, this is incredible that you can do that, you know? And by the way, when he doesn't loop his patters.
no kidding.
When his patter's over, he's over.
It's just over.
He ends it right at the end of the patter.
Wow,
Yep.
that's an art right there.
And the thing is he's got them all apps timed exactly. Like he knows when the ending is for every single patter he uses.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But the story he tells while he's calling, that is fantastic. Because you're literally laughing as you're dancing. I'm sure some dancers probably have trouble dancing to that.
Sure.
But me, I loved every minute of it. So anyway, yeah. So it was really fun to call with him. So
well, now that you're back into it and you've been doing it a while, you got your book and everything out. If you could call a dance anywhere, where would it be?
yeah, I don't have a state or city that I'm looking for. Well, I can't think of any any dance that has 24 squares, I'll take.
No, absolutely. That's
yeah. I did one festival a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
and that was 10 squares.
Where was that?
Yeah, that was in Cortez, Colorado.
Okay,
that was an annual festival they have.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I did that, and that was a lot of fun. So I enjoy calling these. I would probably call somewhere where there's some challenge dancing available.
Okay, very nice.
So maybe Chicago. That would be a good place.
Lots of challenging. This podcast, like I say in that group, this is right here, Hot Atlanta. They dance into the seas. Yeah. Maybe they'll bring you down here. If they bring you down,
or maybe in California somewhere, because there's lots of challenge there.
Absolutely.
And maybe Southern California. So something like that. Okay. But yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. I actually love calling for clubs. Mm-hmm. The reason is, when I used to travel in the 80s, I had one really great dance.
Okay.
And I just did that dance everywhere I went. Same music, same everything. And but with a club, you got to mix it up every week. So I literally schedule for my Plus Club, for example, my music for the entire year.
Wow.
In a spreadsheet.
Okay.
And because I want to make sure that I don't use anything, I don't repeat anything. Okay. Right. So I do that. Then I create module themes. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the only thing hard is keeping up with the modules, because my memory is just not what it used to be.
Sure. I guess.
Right. So I cheat a little bit. I'll tell you. I put some of this stuff on my phone when I'm calling, and I'll look. Oh yeah. I use it as a reminder.
Yep.
And sometimes I make a mistake and I sight call them. I know how to sight call, so I'll just sight call them home, and they don't know the difference.
Nice.
The answers they don't know what they don't know that anything happened. They don't know that I forgot the call in the module.
I'll do that when we were talking earlier about stirs. Yeah. I'll do something and I'll say Ferris wheel, and I'll see that it's a stir if I just like slide through the centers.
Yeah.
I'll do that, and I'm like, what did y'all think of that? And they're like, oh, that's great. And I was like, I had no idea that was where it was going. I just saw it set up, and I was 6 minutes in, so let's get out of this.
Yeah, I call that getting lucky. I do get lucky on occasion.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be calling along, and I'll go, I cannot believe this. I'm so lucky, because the dancers will be somewhere just perfect to do whatever I want to do next. So yeah, that makes calling fun.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'm always trying to come up with a different stir. I use a mixture of Allemand lefts, right and left grands, and home get outs. I used to just do Allemand lefts. Like in the 80s, I just did Allemand lefts, but now I try to mix it up. Okay. I also write a lot of get out modules.
Okay.
More than I'll ever get around to calling. And so I try to figure, okay, so with this dance, I'm going to need, I've got 7 tips, and I've got 5 per tip. That's a lot of get out modules, right? So I'm not going to remember that many.
Maybe your next book is just a book on get outs.
Yeah, and I don't want to call the same one twice.
Gotcha.
Right. So I make a list of them, and if I just glance at them right before I call the tip, I can remember them.
Wow.
But I can't remember them if I don't glance at them.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I'll get confused, and so I'm trying to figure out a system for my old brain that'll work.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I think it's a book.
What's that?
I think it's a book. You need to
Is that a book?
On get outs. Yep.
Well, my plus book does have hundreds of get outs.
Oh, okay, outstanding.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
My plus book does, and my newsletter will have hundreds of mainstream.
Very nice. Okay.
Get outs as well.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm good for get outs.
Okay.
I can write those things all day long.
I am always looking for a new get out. I've got a good handful that I know. Another good handful that I have on note cards, and I'll throw it up there on my laptop.
There you go.
And keep an eye on it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I do 5 sequences and a stir for every tip.
Very nice.
So that's and I try to keep every sequence in the 20 call range.
Okay.
About 20 calls. When I first started doing that, I wasn't particularly good at keeping count, but I've gotten much better. I can just feel.
Okay.
I've gotten so used to doing it that I can feel when it's time to resolve.
Nice.
And anyway,
well, Larry, I'm looking forward.
There's times when you've called about 13 calls and you have the perfect resolve spot.
Yeah, you see it. You see it set up. Yep.
But you need to call some more calls. So it's nice to have some zeros in your head.
It is, but if you're like in a national convention setting, something where you don't know all the dancers,
that's different.
When I see that corner come up, I'm like, we're out. Let's go.
That's right. Yeah. We're gonna go for it. Right. Cool. All right.
Larry, I'm looking forward to the book, brother. Getting a look at that.
Okay.
It has been a pleasure. Want to do this again? We've been going for about an hour, and man, we've had occasion to talk the last couple of conventions. You remember Caller Lab also?
Yes.
And so I'll be there at the national convention. Hope to see you at the GSI. Taking up the class.
I'll be there as well.
And and so we'll see you down the road. Are you? So you're going to be at Caller Lab in North Carolina? Outstanding.
I will be.
Okay.
I'm actually teaching a session on the history of square dance music.
I will definitely go ahead.
Isn't that interesting?
I will go ahead and get my seat for that one.
Okay.
Larry, it's been a pleasure, brother.
Yes.
I will talk to you soon. Nationals and Caller Lab coming up. Yes. Brother, it's been a pleasure. I will talk to you again.
It's always great to talk to you.
See you, Larry.
Take care.
Have a good night, man.
Bye-bye.